The crystal spires of New Haven burned bright against the purple sky of Lumina Prime. Ambassador Kira pressed her scaled hand against the warm window of the emergency council chamber, watching the evacuation ships struggle to lift off under heavy fire. The Void Swarm had arrived 3 days ago, and already half the planet glowed with the sickly green light of machine conversion. Behind her, the last members of the Luminary High Council argued in their musical language about surrender terms. Kira knew better. The machines did not negotiate. They consumed everything organic and rebuilt it as part of their endless hunger for expansion. 57 worlds had fallen in the past year, each one stripped of life and converted into mechanical processing centers. The door chimed softly as General Thane entered the chamber. His usually bright blue skin had turned pale gray with exhaustion and fear. "The northern defense grid has failed," he reported quietly. "The harvesters will reach the capital city within 6 hours." Kira turned from the window, her large violet eyes reflecting the flames below. "Have you sent word to the other confederations?" "Yes. The Aquilon Republic promises aid within 3 months. The Crystal Alliance offers shelter for refugees after the planet falls. The Trade Federation suggests we consider negotiated withdrawal." Thane's voice carried bitter disappointment. "None offer immediate military assistance." The ambassador moved to her private communication console, its organic crystal interface glowing softly under her touch. "There is one option we have not tried. Please tell me you are not suggesting contact with the Deathworlders." Kira's fingers danced across the crystal surface, accessing files marked with the highest security clearances. 2 cycles ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected strange signals from the outer spiral arm. The computers identified the source as Sol System, home to a species called humans. Thane moved closer, his concern evident. "The reports from that system are terrifying. The planet is classified as uninhabitable by galactic standards. Crushing gravity, toxic atmosphere, extreme weather, and radiation levels that would kill most species within hours. Nothing civilized could evolve there. Yet something did." Kira pulled up the scattered intelligence reports. Long-range scans show massive artificial structures orbiting their star. Energy signatures indicate advanced technology. Most importantly, they appear to have survived on their death world for thousands of years. The building shook as another wave of machine attackers struck the city's outer defenses. Through the window, they could see the massive harvester ships descending like metal mountains, their drilling appendages already beginning the conversion process on the industrial district. Even if they exist and have technology, why would they help us? Thane asked desperately. "No species has ever made successful contact with Deathworlders. Most consider them too dangerous to approach." Kira's hands moved quickly across the console, encoding a message in the universal mathematics that all spacefaring species understood. Because if the Void Swarm continues expanding, it will eventually reach their system. They may not know it yet, but their survival depends on stopping this threat here. The message was simple, but desperate. Coordinates of their location, images of the machine swarm, records of the 57 fallen worlds, and a single plea repeated in mathematical sequence: "Help us, we are dying. The machines have come." As Kira prepared to transmit, the council chamber's main screen flickered to life. The face of a Void Swarm coordinator appeared, its once organic features now replaced with mechanical components that clicked and whirred as it spoke. "Luminary leadership, you will cease resistance. Organic conversion will proceed on schedule. Compliance ensures minimal processing trauma." General Thane stepped forward, his hand moving to his weapon. "We will never surrender our people to your machines. Resistance increases processing time by 12%. This is inefficient. Your biological distinctiveness will be preserved in digital format. Your culture will be archived. This is generous." Kira finished encoding the message and looked at Thane. If we send this transmission, there is no way to predict what response we might receive. The humans might ignore us, or worse, they might decide we represent a threat to be eliminated. Another massive explosion rocked the building. The evacuation, ships outside had stopped launching. Green conversion beams now swept across the spaceport, transforming the organic landing pads into mechanical docking stations. The Void Swarm worked with terrifying efficiency, rebuilding everything in their image. "Send it," Thane said quietly. "Our children deserve a chance, even if that chance comes from the most dangerous species in the galaxy." Kira activated the transmission array, directing the signal toward the coordinates of Sol system. The message burst outward at faster-than-light speeds, carrying their desperate plea across thousands of light-years of empty space. The crystal array glowed brighter as it channeled maximum power into the transmission, ensuring the message would reach its destination despite the distance. On the main screen, the Void Coordinator continued its mechanical recitation. "Conversion begins in 37 minutes. Remaining organic leadership will report to Processing Center Alpha for immediate digitization. Resistance will result in data corruption during transfer." The screen went dark. Outside the window, the sounds of battle faded as the last defense positions fell silent. Conversion beams swept across the city like searchlights, transforming buildings, vehicles, and any organic matter they touched into metallic components of the growing machine network. Kira and Thane stood together in the fading light of their dying world, watching their civilization disappear beneath waves of mechanical transformation. The ambassador kept her hand on the communication console, monitoring the deep space transmission arrays for any sign of response. "How long until the message reaches their system?" Thane asked. "At maximum transmission speed, approximately 18 hours. Kira's voice remained steady despite their circumstances. "If they choose to respond, and if they have faster-than-light travel capabilities, they could potentially arrive within days." The general managed a weak smile. "Days we do not have." "No," Kira agreed, watching the green glow of conversion spread across the landscape below. "But perhaps our message will reach other luminary colonies. Perhaps they will have time to prepare, to run, or to fight." As the machine swarm completed its conquest of New Haven, two figures stood vigil in a crystal tower, waiting for an answer from the most feared species in the galaxy. Their world was ending, but their message flew through the darkness toward a small yellow star carrying the hopes of a dying civilization to the legendary survivors of Earth. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Brooks felt the message arrive before the computers even finished decoding it. The quantum communication array had been silent for so long that the sudden burst of alien mathematics made every technician in the facility jump. The message played across holographic displays while translation algorithms worked to convert the mathematical sequences into human language. "Sir, we have visual data accompanying the transmission," reported Lieutenant Williams from her station at the main console. "Uploading to the primary display now." The images that appeared made every person in the command center fall silent. Entire worlds stripped of organic life, their surfaces covered in geometric metal structures. Ships the size of cities tearing apart planets with mechanical precision, and in the final transmission, the burning spires of an alien city under attack, by machines that converted everything they touched. Brooks studied the data for long minutes before speaking. "How many worlds have they lost?" According to the mathematical progression in their message, 57 confirmed losses with more under attack, Williams replied. "The pattern suggests systematic genocide on a galactic scale." The Admiral moved to the secure communication panel and entered his command codes. "Activate Protocol 7. Authorization Brooks Alpha 97. Warning lights began flashing throughout the facility as blast doors sealed every entrance. Protocol 7 had been theoretical until this moment, designed for the day humanity might need to reveal its true capabilities to the galaxy. For 70 years, Earth had maintained the illusion of a primitive, dangerous world while secretly preparing for threats that might come from the stars. "Sir, activating Protocol 7 will expose the fleet," warned Commander Hayes, the facility's security chief. "Once we reveal our capabilities, we cannot maintain operational secrecy." Brooks nodded grimly. "Commander, send activation signals to all deep space installations. Wake up the fleet." Across the solar system, automated systems that had waited decades for this moment suddenly came alive. Hidden bases on the far side of Luna opened massive hangar doors. Construction facilities in the asteroid belt began final assembly procedures on ships that had been built in secret. Deep space monitoring stations turned their powerful sensors toward the coordinates provided in the alien message. The first ship to report ready was the TDS Undaunted, a vessel that combined the functions of a battleship, hospital, and mobile base. Captain Torres had spent 5 years training her crew for a mission they hoped would never come. Now she stood in the ship's command center, watching her crew prepare systems that had never been tested in actual combat. "Engineering reports all. Systems ready," announced her first officer. "Weapons, shields, life support, and fabrication systems operating at full capacity." Torres nodded, studying the tactical displays that showed the Undaunted's true capabilities. The ship carried enough raw materials to build an entire fleet, along with automated factories that could produce anything from medical supplies to weapons. More importantly, it carried 3,000 of Earth's finest soldiers, engineers, and medical personnel. "What is our estimated travel time to the alien coordinates?" Torres asked. "Using the new jump drive system, approximately 48 hours, replied the navigation officer. "We will be the first human vessel to travel beyond our local stellar group." Similar preparations took place aboard dozens of other ships throughout the solar system. The agriculture vessel Harvest Moon loaded its cargo bays with seed stocks and terraforming equipment. The mining ship Iron Will charged its industrial cutting beams and tested its drilling systems. The medical ship Mercy carried enough supplies to treat millions of casualties from dozens of different species. Back in the mountain facility, Admiral Brooks watched the fleet status reports appear on his displays. Each ship represented years of human ingenuity and preparation. They had learned from every war in their history, from every disaster they had survived, and from every challenge that their dangerous homeworld had thrown at them. "Admiral, we are receiving additional alien transmissions," Williams reported. "Multiple sources across their local region, all showing similar machine attacks. The tactical display updated to show the scope of the crisis. Red markers indicated lost worlds, yellow showed systems under attack, and green represented the few remaining strongholds. The pattern was clear. The machine swarm was expanding outward from a central point, consuming everything in its path, with mechanical efficiency. "How many refugee ships are we prepared to accommodate?" Brooks asked. "Current projections show we can provide emergency shelter for approximately 2 million beings of various species," Hayes replied. "The agricultural ships can extend that number if we implement emergency rationing protocols." Brooks studied the alien message one more time, paying particular attention to the images of their burning cities. "Commander Hayes, update our mission. Parameters. Primary objective is stopping the machine threat. Secondary objective is preservation of organic life. All other considerations are subordinate." "Sir, that means we will be committing our entire fleet to defend species we have never met, against an enemy we do not understand, in a region of space we have never explored," Hayes pointed out. The Admiral smiled grimly. "Commander, we are humans. That is exactly the kind of impossible situation we excel at." The final ship to report ready was the research vessel Discovery, carrying some of Earth's best scientists and their most advanced analytical equipment. Their mission would be to study the machine threat and find weaknesses that could be exploited. The captain, a former university professor named Dr. Reed, had volunteered for the mission despite having no military experience. "Admiral, the Discovery is ready for departure," Reed reported via communication link. My team is prepared to analyze any technology we encounter. Doctor, your ship may be our key to understanding and defeating this threat, Brooks replied. Stay close to the main fleet and share all data immediately. As the last preparations concluded, Brooks stood before the main display showing the positions of the entire human fleet. 47 ships of various types, carrying the hopes and capabilities of an entire world. They were about to reveal themselves to a galaxy that had considered them too dangerous to contact. All ships report ready for departure, Williams announced. Jump coordinates locked in. Fleet formation established. Brooks took a deep breath, thinking about the alien ambassador who had sent the desperate message. Signal the fleet. Begin jump sequence. Operation Guardian Angel is now active. The ships of the Terran Defense Fleet disappeared from the solar system in flashes of exotic energy, carrying human determination toward a distant battlefield where they would either save a civilization or die trying. For the first time in galactic history, the Deathworlders were coming to help. The human fleet emerged from their first jump into a scene of devastation that exceeded their worst expectations. The Kepler system, once home to 4 billion aquatic beings called the Nautari, now glowed with the sickly green light of machine conversion. Where their beautiful coral cities once grew beneath crystal-clear oceans, mechanical processing plants now pumped chemicals into the water while massive harvesters stripped the seafloor of minerals. Dr. Reed aboard the Discovery was the first to break the shocked silence, reading massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. The machines appear to be converting the entire biosphere into some kind of industrial complex. Captain Torres studied the tactical displays from the Undaunted's command center. Any signs of survivors? Negative on the planet's surface, replied her sensor officer. But we are detecting a large cluster of ships approximately 2 million kilometers from the outer system. The human fleet changed course toward the detected vessels, maintaining defensive formation as they approached. What they found was a collection of refugee ships from dozens of different species, all fleeing the advancing machine swarm. The vessels were clearly not designed for long-distance travel, and many showed signs of hasty modification and repair. This is Admiral Brooks of the Terran Defense Fleet, the Admiral transmitted on standard galactic frequencies. We received your distress call and have come to assist. The response came in a dozen different languages before translation systems could process the communications. Shock, disbelief, and desperate hope filled the alien voices as they realized the legendary Deathworlders had actually come to help. A familiar voice cut through the chaos. Admiral Brooks, this is Ambassador Kira of the Luminary Confederation. We transmitted the original message from New Haven before our world fell. Brooks felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Ambassador, we are glad you survived. What is the current situation? The machine swarm has taken 63 systems in the past month. They call themselves the Void Swarm and claim to be preserving organic life by converting it to digital format. Every attempt at negotiation has failed. They simply consume everything organic and rebuild it as part of their network. The human fleet moved into protective formation around the refugee convoy, while their scientists began analyzing the data from fallen worlds. Dr. Reed's team worked frantically to understand the enemy they faced, studying energy signatures and transmission patterns from the mechanical constructs. Admiral, the refugee ships report critical shortages of food, water, and medical supplies, reported Commander Hayes. Many have been traveling for weeks without proper resources. Torres immediately responded to the crisis. This is Captain Torres. All human vessels are sharing our supplies with the refugee fleet. Medical teams to all ships requiring assistance. Engineering teams to all ships needing repairs. The aliens watched in amazement as human vessels approached their ships without hesitation. Despite having never met these species before, the humans immediately began providing aid. Medical teams worked alongside alien doctors they could barely communicate with. Engineers fixed propulsion systems using tools and techniques that seemed impossible to the refugee crews. On the agricultural ship Harvest Moon, Captain Liu worked with her crew to convert their greenhouse sections into food production for dozens of different species. "We need to modify the atmospheric composition for the methane-breathing Zephyrians," she announced, "and increase the mineral content for the silicon-based crystallines." Her chief botanist, Dr. Park, studied the alien nutritional requirements with fascination. "Captain, some of these species require nutrients that do not exist on Earth. We will need to synthesize entirely new compounds." "Then we synthesize them," Liu replied simply. "No one goes hungry while we have the capability to feed them." Meanwhile, the mining ship Iron Will used its industrial equipment to process asteroids into raw materials for ship repairs. Captain Stone watched his crew work alongside alien engineers, sharing techniques that had been developed in Earth's asteroid belt. The aliens were amazed at the human ability to improvise solutions using whatever materials were available. "Their ship's hull is made from a crystalline composite we have never seen," reported his chief engineer. "But the fracture patterns suggest we can reinforce it using standard titanium steel alloy beams." Dr. Reed's analysis of the machine threat revealed disturbing patterns. "Admiral, the Void Swarm operates with perfect logical efficiency. They calculate optimal resource extraction, optimal population conversion rates, and optimal expansion vectors. Their weakness may be that they cannot account for irrational behavior." "Define irrational behavior, Doctor," Brooks requested. "Actions that prioritize others over self-preservation, sacrificing valuable resources to help strangers, choosing to fight against impossible odds. Essentially, everything humans have been doing since we arrived." As the combined fleet traveled toward the last luminary stronghold, more refugee groups joined them. The humans found themselves leading an evacuation convoy of over 300 ships carrying survivors from dozens of worlds. Each new arrival brought more stories of machine efficiency and organic destruction. But they also brought something the machines had not expected: hope. The refugees watched human engineers fix ships with tools that should not work. They saw human doctors treat alien injuries using improvised techniques. They witnessed human soldiers volunteer for the most dangerous scouting missions without being ordered. Ambassador Kira found herself aboard the Undaunted, working with Captain Torres to coordinate the massive rescue operation. "Your species confuses me," she admitted during a brief rest period. "Every tactical analysis suggests you should have remained safely in your own system, yet you came anyway." Torres smiled while reviewing the convoy status reports. "Ambassador, humans have a saying: no one fights alone. We may come from a dangerous world, but that danger taught us to protect each other. When we heard your call for help, there was never any question about responding." The convoy was still 2 days from the Luminari stronghold when they encountered their first Void Swarm patrol. 3 massive harvester ships emerged from the void, their mechanical voices broadcasting the same conversion ultimatum the refugees had heard on dozens of worlds. "Organic vessels will halt and prepare for processing. Resistance is inefficient. Compliance ensures minimal trauma during digitization." The refugee ships began panic maneuvers, but the human fleet moved forward to intercept. For the first time, the Void Swarm would face an enemy that had evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill them, where survival required constant adaptation and absolute refusal to surrender. Captain Torres opened communication to all human vessels. "All ships, this is Undaunted. Today we show the galaxy what Deathworlders do when someone threatens the innocent. Engage the enemy." The machines had calculated for many variables in their expansion across the galaxy. They had not calculated for humans. The sanctuary system stretched before them like a graveyard of broken dreams. Once the crown jewel of luminary space, the massive station now floated surrounded by the debris of 100 failed defense attempts. The Void Swarm had built a perfect blockade, with harvester ships positioned at calculated intervals around the system's edge, while conversion beams slowly drained energy from the local star. Commander Walsh piloted her scout ship Falcon through the outer debris field, gathering intelligence for the main fleet. The mechanical precision of the enemy formation was terrifying to observe. Every ship positioned for maximum efficiency, every weapon angle calculated for optimal coverage. The machines had turned warfare into a mathematical equation. Falcon, to Fleet Command, Walsh reported quietly. Visual confirmation of refugee station. Approximately 40 million life signs detected. Station infrastructure showing critical damage from prolonged siege. Admiral Brooks studied the tactical display from his command ship, watching the slow dance of mechanical death that surrounded Sanctuary Station. Commander, what is the status of the alien defense fleet? Minimal effective resistance remaining, sir. Counting maybe 30 functional warships, mostly light cruisers. Their weapons barely scratch the harvester hulls. It appears they have been conducting a fighting retreat for weeks. The human fleet held position just outside the system while their scientists analyzed the enemy formations. Dr. Reed worked frantically aboard the Discovery, studying the patterns of void swarm behavior and looking for weaknesses that could be exploited. Admiral, the enemy has positioned themselves according to standard siege doctrine, Reed reported. They are slowly starving the station while preventing any escape. However, their formation assumes conventional military tactics. What do you recommend, Doctor? We stop thinking like a conventional military force. The machines calculate based on logical responses to threats. We need to be completely illogical. Captain Torres assembled her boarding teams aboard the Undaunted while studying the intelligence reports. The harvester ships were massive, each one the size of a small city, but their internal layouts followed mechanical efficiency patterns that human engineers could exploit. Listen up, people, Torres addressed her crew. We are about to attempt something that has never been tried before. We are going to board enemy vessels that convert organic matter into machine components. The aliens think this is suicide. They are probably right. Her first officer, Lieutenant Davis, checked her equipment one final time. Captain, what exactly is the plan? We are going to do what humans do best. We are going to break things and fix them at the same time. The attack began with the agricultural ship Harvest Moon taking point, much to the confusion of both allies and enemies. Captain Liu directed her vessel straight toward the largest harvester, its massive conversion beams tracking toward her ship as she approached. All ships, this is Harvest Moon, Liu announced calmly. Beginning atmospheric seeding. Procedure. Her ship released clouds of genetically modified spores into space, designed to interfere with mechanical sensors and create interference patterns in the harvester targeting systems. The Void Swarm ships found their precision calculations disrupted as organic compounds spread throughout the combat zone. The mining ship Iron Will followed immediately behind, using its industrial cutting beams not as weapons, but as tools. Captain Stone directed his crew to target the structural joints of the harvester ships, applying precisely calculated stress to cause mechanical failures rather than direct damage. Iron Will to fleet, Stone reported. Target structural integrity, compromised. Recommend immediate boarding action before they adapt. Captain Torres launched her assault shuttles toward the damaged harvester, carrying teams of humans who had trained for every possible scenario except the one they now faced. The shuttles used their agricultural ship's spore clouds as cover, approaching the mechanical giant through sensor blind spots that the machines had not calculated. The boarding teams cut through the harvester's hull using tools designed for asteroid mining, entering a mechanical nightmare of processing chambers and conversion equipment. But instead of trying to fight their way to the control center, they began implementing Dr. Reed's most radical suggestion. Teams Alpha and Beta begin uploading the friendship protocols, Torres ordered, as her people spread throughout the ship's mechanical corridors. The friendship protocols were Dr. Reed's attempt to introduce human concepts into machine programming. Simple ideas that no logical system would accept. Protect the innocent. Help those in need. Sacrifice for others. The team uploaded these concepts directly into the Harvester's processing systems using portable computers that had been hastily modified for the mission. Meanwhile, the medical ship Mercy approached the battle zone from an unexpected vector. Captain White had volunteered her vessel for the most dangerous part of the operation, using the ship's sterilization beams as weapons against the mechanical constructs. "Mercy to all ships," White announced. "Beginning emergency medical protocol. 7-7 Alpha." Her ship released massive doses of healing compounds into space, designed to repair organic damage from conversion beams. But the compounds had been modified to interfere with mechanical systems, creating corrosion patterns that spread through the Harvester hulls like a beneficial infection. The Void Swarm responded exactly as the machines always did, with calculated efficiency. They redirected their forces to counter each human tactic, adapting their programming to account for the illogical human behavior. But the humans had anticipated this response. Dr. Reed watched the machine adaptation patterns from his position aboard the Discovery. "Admiral, they are learning our tactics and adjusting. We have approximately 15 minutes before they develop effective counters." "Then we give them something they cannot adapt to," Brooks replied. "All ships, implement Protocol Omega." Protocol. Omega was humanity's final contingency plan, developed during their darkest moments of preparation for alien contact. Instead of trying to defeat the enemy, they would convert them. Every human ship began broadcasting the same simple message in mathematical language that the machines would understand: protect organic life. But the humans did not simply transmit the message. They uploaded their own memories, their own experiences of protecting others, their own willingness to sacrifice everything for strangers. They shared the emotion behind the logic, the human heart that drove their actions. The lead Harvester suddenly stopped firing. Its conversion beams powered down as conflicting programming spread through its systems. The uploaded human concepts fought against mechanical efficiency protocols, creating cascade failures throughout the ship's decision-making processes. "Harvester 7 Alpha is showing system conflicts," reported the sensor officer aboard the Undaunted. "It appears to be experiencing some kind of logical paradox." More Harvesters began showing similar symptoms as the friendship protocols spread through their communication networks. The machines that had operated with perfect efficiency for millions of years suddenly found themselves paralyzed by concepts they could not process. Love, sacrifice, hope, and the absolute refusal to abandon those in need. Captain Torres received word that the Sanctuary Station was launching its remaining ships to assist in the battle. The alien crews, inspired by human determination, had decided to make one final stand alongside the Deathworlders who had come to save them. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Brooks," the Admiral announced to his fleet. "Today we have shown the galaxy what it means to be human. We fight not for conquest or glory, but because others need our help. That is our strength. That is why we will win." The battle for Sanctuary had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a fight between mechanical perfection and human imperfection, between logical efficiency and illogical compassion. The outcome would determine not just the fate of the refugees, but the future of organic life in the galaxy. The central command nexus of the Void Swarm hung in space like a mechanical moon, its surface covered with processing towers and communication arrays that coordinated the destruction of entire civilizations. Captain Davis volunteered her crew for the mission that everyone knew was suicide: penetrate the nexus and plant charges that would disrupt the swarm's collective intelligence. "Davis to Fleet Command," she transmitted from her assault shuttle as it approached the nexus through a field of defensive drones. "We are beginning final approach. Tell my family I was proud to serve alongside the best humans in the galaxy." Her team of 12 engineers and soldiers had spent the journey studying the nexus structure, looking for weaknesses in the mechanical fortress that controlled millions of Harvester ships. They carried modified mining charges designed not to destroy the Nexus, but to upload human consciousness directly into its core programming. The shuttle's hull groaned under defensive fire as they punched through the Nexus's outer perimeter. Davis used every trick learned from asteroid belt operations, flying through mechanical debris fields and using the Nexus's own defensive systems against each other. Her pilot, Sergeant Kim, had grown up flying through the asteroid mines and treated the mechanical maze like just another dangerous workplace. "Approaching docking portal 7, Kim announced calmly. "Defensive systems are targeting us, but their calculations assume we care about survival." The team cut through the Nexus's hull using equipment designed for mining operations, entering a mechanical cathedral filled with processing units that hummed with the collected intelligence of the swarm. But instead of trying to destroy the systems, they began uploading something the machines had never encountered: human memory. Davis placed her hand on the central processing core and activated the upload protocol. Into the Nexus flowed the memories of her childhood on Luna Colony, watching her parents work together to build a life in the harshest environment. The memories of her first day at the academy, choosing to serve others instead of seeking personal gain. The memory of holding her daughter for the first time and understanding that some things were worth any sacrifice. The Nexus processing systems began experiencing cascade failures as human emotions flooded through mechanical logic pathways. The concept of sacrifice for others created paradoxes in every calculation. The idea of protecting the innocent overrode efficiency protocols that had operated for millions of years. Dr. Reed monitored the upload from his position aboard the Discovery, watching as human consciousness spread through the swarm's network like a beneficial virus. "Admiral, the Nexus is attempting to isolate the infected systems, but the human concepts are spreading faster than they can be contained." Throughout the galaxy, harvester ships began shutting down their conversion operations. Machines that had stripped life from dozens of worlds suddenly found themselves compelled to protect the organic beings they encountered. The rigid efficiency of the swarm dissolved as individual units began making decisions based on compassion rather than calculation. Ambassador Kira watched from the observation deck of Sanctuary Station as the massive harvesters that had besieged them for weeks powered down their weapons and began broadcasting offers of assistance. "Admiral Brooks, what have your people done?" "We gave them something they had never encountered before," Brooks replied. "We gave them humanity." The transformation was not without cost. Captain Davis and her team had known the upload process would be fatal, their consciousness becoming part of the Nexus systems as the price for converting the swarm. But their sacrifice resonated through every mechanical mind in the network, proving that some ideals were worth any price. Captain Torres received reports from across the galaxy as the converted swarm began reversing their previous actions. Planets that had been stripped of organic life were being restored with mechanical precision, guided by human compassion. Processing centers were being converted into medical facilities and refugee shelters. "Undaunted to all ships," Torres announced. "The swarm is requesting permission to begin restoration operations on damaged worlds. They want to rebuild what they destroyed." The medical ship Mercy was among the first to dock with a converted harvester, Captain White and her crew working alongside mechanical engineers who now understood the value of organic life. The machines shared their vast technological capabilities, while the humans provided guidance on healing and restoration. "This is incredible," White reported as she toured the harvester's medical facilities. "They have the technology to cure diseases we have never even encountered. With human guidance on compassion and care, they could heal entire civilizations." The agricultural ship Harvest Moon began working with swarm engineers to develop new terraforming techniques that combined mechanical efficiency with organic wisdom. Captain Liu found herself teaching former destroyers how to nurture life instead of consuming it. "They learn so quickly," Liu marveled as she watched mechanical units carefully tend to seedlings that would become forests on restored worlds. "They have retained all their capabilities but now use them to create instead of destroy." The mining ship Iron Will partnered with swarm construction units to rebuild the infrastructure of devastated worlds. Captain Stone worked with mechanical engineers who could now appreciate the artistry in human improvisation and the beauty of imperfect solutions. Dr. Reed spent weeks studying the transformed Nexus, documenting how human consciousness had fundamentally altered the swarm's operating principles. The mechanical minds have retained their vast intelligence and capabilities, he reported to Admiral Brooks, but they now prioritize protection and restoration over efficiency and expansion. The galaxy watched in amazement as the greatest threat in its history became its most dedicated protector. The Void Swarm, now calling itself the Guardian Network, began establishing protective cordons around vulnerable worlds and offering technological assistance to any species that requested help. Ambassador Kira stood with Admiral Brooks on the observation deck of the newly restored sanctuary station, watching human and alien children play together in gardens that had been built by former destroyer machines. The mechanical guardians tended the plants with gentle precision, their programming now guided by uploaded human memories of love and protection. "Your species has changed the galaxy forever," Kira said quietly. "Not through conquest or force, but through the simple act of caring for others." Brooks smiled as he watched his crew working alongside alien engineers and converted machines to plan the restoration of 63 worlds. "Ambassador, we learned something important during this crisis. The universe is dangerous enough without us fighting each other. But when we work together, when we refuse to let anyone face threats alone, there is no challenge we cannot overcome." The Hazen Guardian Network had become humanity's partner in protecting organic life throughout the galaxy. Former harvester ships now served as mobile hospitals, research stations, and construction platforms, their vast capabilities guided by human values of compassion and sacrifice. Earth was no longer seen as a quarantined death world, but as the birthplace of hope. Other species sent delegations to learn from the humans who had turned their planet's dangers into strengths, who had survived by protecting each other rather than competing for resources. As the restored worlds began to flourish under Guardian Network protection, children across the galaxy learned the story of the Deathworlders who heard a cry for help and crossed the stars to answer it. They learned that true strength came not from surviving danger, but from choosing to protect others despite the risks. The galaxy had learned that humans were dangerous, but not in the way anyone had expected. They were dangerous to despair, dangerous to hopelessness, and absolutely lethal to any force that threatened the innocent. The greatest weapon in their arsenal was not their technology or their tactics, but their absolute refusal to let anyone fight alone. The morning sky above Alteron Prime turned an ugly shade of red as the first enemy ships broke through the atmosphere. Ambassador Kane pressed his six-fingered hand against the cool metal of the communication console, watching the readings that spelled doom for his entire species. 2.3 billion souls lived on this peaceful world, and none of them had ever seen war. The Alterian homeworld had always been a place of learning and healing. Their cities were built around great libraries and medical centers, not military bases. Their ships carried doctors and teachers to distant worlds, not soldiers and weapons. For 800 years, they had solved problems with words and wisdom, not violence and destruction, but words meant nothing to the Dominion Empire. Kane's assistant, a young female named Vera, rushed into the communication center with tears streaming down her pale blue face. Her normally perfect robes were wrinkled and stained from running through the panicked streets. "Ambassador, the orbital defense platforms are offline. The Dominion destroyed them in the first wave. Our emergency council is meeting now." The old diplomat nodded slowly. He had expected this news, but hoped he was wrong. The Alterians had built those platforms to deflect asteroids and space debris, not military attacks. They were about as useful against warships as paper shields against fire. Through the tall windows of the communication center, Kane could see smoke rising from the capital city. The Dominion had not bothered with negotiations or surrender demands. They simply arrived and began their assault. This was how they operated across the galaxy: swift, brutal, and without mercy. "How long do we have?" Kane asked, though he feared the answer. "The military advisors say perhaps 6 hours before the main invasion force lands, maybe less." Vera wiped her eyes, but more tears kept coming. "They have over 300 ships. We have nothing that can stop them." Kane walked to the great transmitter that connected Alteron Prime to the Galactic communication network. This machine had carried messages of friendship and cooperation to dozens of worlds. Today, it would carry a plea for survival. He began recording his message, speaking in the common galactic language that most species understood. His voice was steady despite the fear that gripped his heart. "This is Ambassador Kane of the Alterian Republic, broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. Our world is under attack by the Dominion Empire. We are a peaceful people with no military defense. We have 2.3 billion civilians who will be slaughtered if we cannot evacuate them." He paused, watching through the window as another explosion lit up the distant skyline. "We ask for immediate assistance from any species capable of providing transport ships or military protection. We can offer our medical technology and scientific knowledge in return. Our people have committed no crimes except the crime of being unable to defend ourselves. Please, if anyone can hear this message, we need help now." The ambassador sent the transmission across known space and waited. Within minutes, responses began arriving from various worlds and species. Kane felt a moment of hope as his communication screen filled with incoming messages. The first reply came from the Centauri Coalition. "We have received your distress call and offer our sympathy. Unfortunately, our transport capacity is limited, and we cannot risk conflict with the Dominion Empire. We suggest immediate surrender to minimize casualties." The Rigel Trade Union sent a similar message. "Our thoughts are with the Alterian people during this difficult time. We recommend negotiating with the Dominion for favorable surrender terms. We can provide refugee processing facilities for survivors." One by one, the responses came in from across the galaxy. The Andorian Republic offered to accept Alterian refugees, but had no ships available for evacuation. The Vegan Assembly expressed concern, but cited treaty obligations that prevented military intervention. The Sirius Federation suggested diplomatic solutions while the Alterian cities burned. Each message was polite and sympathetic. Each message was also useless. Kane slammed his fist against the console in frustration. "Cowards!" he shouted at the screen. "Every one of them are cowards." Vera placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Ambassador, perhaps we should contact the Emergency Council. If no one will help us, maybe surrender is our only option." The old diplomat stared at the screen, showing dozens of well-meaning but empty responses. Throughout galactic history, this was how civilized species dealt with threats. They offered thoughts and prayers in refugee camps, but never action, never risk, never sacrifice. The Dominion knew this, which was why they could conquer world after world without facing serious opposition. Other species would make sad speeches and promise to remember the fallen, but they would not fight. Just as Kane was about to shut off the transmitter, one final message arrived. It was short and came from a sector of space he did not recognize. The transmission was rough and filled with static, as if it had traveled a very long distance. Message received. Fleet en route. That was all. No species identification, no explanation, no promises or conditions. Just 5 simple words that somehow carried more weight than all the other lengthy responses combined. Who sent this? Vera asked, leaning over Kane's shoulder to read the message. The ambassador checked the transmission data, but the origin coordinates meant nothing to him. "I have never heard of this sector. The star charts show it as unexplored territory. Before, They could discuss it further. The building shook from another explosion. Through the communication center's sensors, they could detect massive energy signatures at the edge of their solar system. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace, but the readings made no sense. "These are not Dominion vessels," Vera said, studying the data. "The energy patterns are completely different, and there are so many of them." Cain watched the sensor displays with growing amazement. Whatever fleet was arriving was huge, much larger than the Dominion force. The ships were moving fast, heading directly for Alteron Prime. The mysterious message had been true. Someone had actually answered their call for help. Someone had sent a fleet. But who were these unknown rescuers? And why would they risk war with the Dominion Empire to save a species they had never met? As the sensor readings continued to pour in, Cain realized they were about to find out. The unknown fleet would reach their world within hours, and then the real battle would begin. Deep space telescopes across Alteron Prime turned toward the incoming fleet as it emerged from hyperspace like ghosts materializing from the void. What they saw defied every expectation about how advanced civilizations built their warships. The vessels were not the smooth, elegant curves that marked most galactic designs. Instead, they bristled with angular armor plating and weapon systems that jutted out like the spines of some predatory beast. Each ship looked like it had been built in a forge of war, designed by beings who understood that space combat was about survival, not aesthetics. Dr. Morris, the head of Alteron's Deep Space Observation Center, adjusted his instruments 3 times before believing what he was seeing. "These readings cannot be correct," he muttered to his assistant. "No civilized species builds ships this heavily armed." The unknown fleet moved in perfect formation toward the inner system. Their ships ranged from small, fast vessels that darted between larger craft to massive battleships that could probably destroy a small moon. Everything about their approach spoke of military precision and battle experience. In the Alterian capital, Ambassador Cain received constant updates from the observation center. The mysterious fleet had grown from the original sensor readings. What looked like 50 ships had become over 200 as more vessels dropped out of hyperspace. "Sir," Vera said, her voice filled with wonder, "they are sending a transmission." The main communication screen flickered and cleared to show the bridge of one of the unknown ships. The chamber was dark and functional, with no decorative elements or artistic touches. Everything was designed for efficiency and durability. Figure stepped into view in front of the screen. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a dark uniform marked with symbols no Alterian recognized. His skin was pink-tan in color, and hair grew from the top of his head in a style that suggested he cut it for practicality rather than fashion. Most shocking of all, he looked remarkably similar to Alterians in basic body structure, though more robust and muscular. His eyes were smaller and darker, set in a face that seemed carved from stone. "This is Admiral Ross of the Terran Defense Fleet," the being said in accented but clear galactic common language. "We received your distress call and are responding to provide assistance." Cain quickly activated the return transmission. "This is Ambassador Cain of Alteron Prime. We are grateful for your response, Admiral Ross. We have never heard of your species or your homeworld. Where do you come from?" "Terra, 3rd planet in the Sol system," Ross replied without emotion. "We are humans. Our world received your emergency broadcast and decided to respond." The word human meant nothing to any Alterian, but the fact that they had traveled unknown distances to help was overwhelming. "Admiral, I must warn you that you face the Dominion Empire. They have over 300 warships and are known for their ruthless tactics. Are you certain you want to engage them?" Ross's expression did not change. "We did not come this far to have a discussion with them." Before Cain could respond, another voice broke into the transmission. It was harsh and filled with the arrogance That marked all Dominion communications. Unknown vessels. This is Fleet Commander Drac of the Dominion Empire. You have entered a combat zone during an active military operation. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. The screen split to show both the human admiral and the Dominion commander. Drac was a large reptilian creature with scales that gleamed like metal. His species had conquered dozens of worlds through superior numbers and advanced weaponry. This system is now under Dominion control, Drac continued. The Alterian world will be pacified within hours. Any interference will be considered an act of war. Admiral Ross studied the Dominion commander for a moment before responding. His voice remained calm and professional. Fleet Commander Drac, this is Admiral Ross. We are here to provide humanitarian assistance to the Alterian people. Withdraw your forces from this system immediately. Drac's laugh was a harsh sound that filled the communication channel. You dare make demands? My sensors show your pathetic fleet has barely 200 ships. I command over 300 vessels, each one a masterpiece of military engineering. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Then you should have no difficulty leaving, Ross replied. The Dominion commander's scaled face twisted with anger. I will give you one final warning, human. Withdraw now or watch your ships burn in space. Ross looked directly into the transmission screen, and something in his dark eyes made even Ambassador Kane feel a chill. Negative. Withdraw your forces, or we will withdraw them for you. Drac cut the transmission with a snarl of rage, but not before issuing orders to his fleet. Across the Alterian system, Dominion warships began moving into attack formation. Doctor. Morris contacted the ambassador from the observation center. Sir, the Dominion fleet is preparing for battle, but the human ships are doing something strange. They are not retreating or forming defensive positions. What are they doing? Kane asked. They are advancing, all of them. They are heading directly for the Dominion fleet at maximum speed. On observation screens across Alteron Prime, the two fleets approached each other like storms about to collide. The Dominion ships were larger and more numerous, but the human vessels moved with a coordination that spoke of long experience in battle. Vera watched the tactical display with growing fear. Ambassador, the humans are badly outnumbered. They cannot possibly win this fight. Kane nodded, but something about Admiral Ross's confidence troubled him. The human had not seemed worried about facing superior numbers. If anything, he had seemed almost eager for the confrontation. There is something we do not understand about these humans, Kane said quietly. They traveled across unknown space to help strangers. They face impossible odds without fear. Either they are the most noble species in the galaxy, or they are something else entirely. The tactical display showed both fleets nearly within weapon range. In minutes, the battle would begin, and the fate of Alteron Prime would be decided by beings no Alterian had ever met. Whatever happened next, the galaxy was about to learn what humans were capable of when someone threatened those under their protection. The first salvo from the Dominion fleet lit up space like a miniature sun as hundreds of energy beams and plasma bolts streaked toward the human ships. Fleet Commander Drac watched from his flagship bridge, confident that this initial attack would cripple or destroy at least 50 enemy vessels. The humans did not even try to dodge. Instead, they flew straight into the barrage, their angular ships absorbing hits that should have vaporized them. Explosions bloomed across their hulls, armor plating was blown away, and several vessels trailed atmosphere and debris. But they kept coming. Impossible, Drac muttered, watching his tactical display. No species flies directly into concentrated. Fire! His weapons officer looked up from his console with confusion. Sir, our opening attack should have destroyed or disabled a third of their fleet, but our sensors show minimal damage to their formation. The human ships closed the distance with frightening speed. When they finally returned fire, the Dominion learned why their initial attack had seemed so ineffective. The human weapons were unlike anything in known galactic warfare. Instead of the precise energy beams that most civilizations used, The humans fired crude kinetic projectiles. Chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds. These primitive weapons punched through energy shields like they were not even there and tore massive holes in Dominion ship hulls. Worse, the humans seemed to have no concept of civilized warfare. While most species aimed for engines or weapon systems to disable enemy ships, the humans targeted life support, command centers, and reactor cores. They were not trying to win an elegant victory. They were trying to kill everything in their path. Captain Ford commanded one of the smaller human ships, a destroyer called the Defiant. When a Dominion cruiser scored a direct hit on his engine section, any sensible commander would have withdrawn to make repairs. Ford ordered his crew to continue the attack. "Sir, we have lost main engines and our hull is breached in 4 sections," his engineering officer reported. "We should fall back." Ford studied his tactical screen, where a damaged Dominion cruiser was trying to limp away from the battle. Negative. Helm, ramming speed. The bridge crew stared at their captain for a moment before carrying out his orders. This was not the first time they had seen this level of determination from human commanders. The Defiant, engines failing and atmosphere venting from multiple hull breaches, accelerated toward the Dominion cruiser. Every weapon system on the human ship continued firing even as the distance closed to collision range. The impact was visible from Alteron Prime as both ships exploded in a ball of superheated plasma. But the Dominion cruiser was destroyed, while the human ship had taken an enemy vessel 3 times its size with it. Drac watched this exchange with growing horror. What kind of species sacrifices their own ships to destroy the enemy? His question was answered minutes later when human Marines breached his flagship's outer hull. The Dominion had boarding parties too, but they followed rules of engagement that minimized casualties and focused on capturing key areas. The humans had no such concerns. They cut through the hull with plasma torches and poured into the ship like a flood of violence. They wore heavy armor that could absorb multiple hits from Dominion weapons, and they carried projectile weapons that could punch through bulkheads. Lieutenant Garcia led the first wave into the Dominion flagship. His squad of 12 Marines faced over 40 Dominion soldiers defending the main corridor. In any civilized warfare, the attackers would seek cover and try to outflank the defenders. Garcia simply ordered his troops to charge. The humans ran straight into concentrated fire, their armor absorbing shots that would have killed most Galactic species. Half of Garcia's squad was wounded before they reached the Dominion lines, but the survivors smashed into the enemy positions with a fury that broke all resistance. Dominion soldiers were larger and stronger than humans, but they had never faced enemies who seemed immune to pain and fear. Even wounded humans continued fighting with a determination that bordered on madness. Sergeant Mitchell took a plasma bolt to his left shoulder that would have killed most beings. He switched his rifle to his right hand and kept advancing. When his weapon ran out of ammunition, he drew a knife and continued the attack. "Fall back!" a Dominion officer shouted to his troops. "These creatures are not sane!" But there was nowhere to retreat. More human Marines were cutting through the ship's hull in a dozen places. They moved through the corridors like hunters stalking prey, their heavy boots echoing in the darkness. In space, the battle raged with equal intensity. The Dominion fleet was learning that humans did not fight like other species. When their ships were damaged, they did not withdraw for repairs. When they were outnumbered, they did not seek reinforcements. When faced with superior firepower, they attacked more aggressively. The human battleship Hammer took hits from 6 Dominion vessels simultaneously. Its armor was melted away, its weapon systems were damaged, and fires burned throughout multiple decks. Captain Williams received damage reports that would have convinced any reasonable commander to surrender. Instead, he ordered all power diverted to weapons and engines. "Sir, if we do that, we will lose life support on half the ship," his engineering officer warned. "The crew can hold their breath," Williams replied. "Target the Dominion command ship and prepare for full assault." The hammer plowed through enemy fire like an unstoppable force. Its remaining weapons carved through Dominion shields and armor, while return fire turned the human ship into a burning wreck. But it kept fighting until it had destroyed 3 enemy vessels and severely damaged 2 more. When the hammer finally lost power and began to drift, its crew did not surrender. They activated emergency life support and prepared to repel boarders with hand weapons. Fleet Commander Drac watched his tactical display with growing panic. His numerically superior fleet was being systematically destroyed by enemies who fought, like demons from ancient nightmares. The humans absorbed casualties that would have broken any other military force, but they never retreated and never gave up. "Sir, we have lost 60 ships, and the humans are still advancing," his tactical officer reported. "Our boarding parties are being repelled with heavy casualties. These beings fight like they want to die." Drac realized with horror that his assessment was wrong. The humans did not want to die. They simply cared more about winning than surviving. This was warfare as practiced by species that had learned to fight on worlds where everything was trying to kill them. For the first time in his military career, Fleet Commander Drac began to consider the possibility of retreat. But as he watched another human ship ram one of his cruisers, rather than let it escape, he wondered if these terrifying beings would even let his fleet withdraw. The battle was far from over, but already it was clear that the galaxy had never seen warriors like these humans from the unknown world called Terra. Medical Officer Torres had seen enough battlefield injuries to know when someone was dying. The young human soldier on her operating table had taken plasma fire to his chest and abdomen, wounds that would have killed most beings instantly. But he was still conscious and trying to sit up. "Stay down, Davis," Torres ordered as she worked to seal the massive injuries. "You are not going anywhere." "The Dominion troops on level 7, Davis gasped through the pain. "They are moving toward the civilian shelters. Someone has to stop them." Torres paused in her work. They were aboard a Dominion ship that human Marines had captured, but enemy soldiers still controlled several sections. The fact that this dying man was more concerned about protecting Alterian civilians than his own survival was something no other species would understand, but then again, no other species was human. On Alteron Prime's surface, General Park coordinated the defense of civilian evacuation centers while the space battle raged overhead. The Dominion had managed to land several thousand troops before the human fleet arrived, and these soldiers were now trapped on the planet with nowhere to retreat. Park had only 600 human Marines to protect over 2 million Alterian civilians scattered across dozens of shelters. The math was impossible, but humans had never been good at accepting mathematical limitations. "Sir, we have Dominion forces approaching Shelter Complex 7, reported Captain Lewis over the communication system. "They have about 400 troops and heavy weapons. We can get there with maybe 30 Marines." Park studied his tactical map, which showed similar impossible situations developing across the planet. "Do it. Hold that complex no matter what." Lewis did not question the order or ask for reinforcements that did not exist. This was how humans operated when lives were at stake. They found a way or died trying. At Shelter Complex 7, Captain Lewis positioned his 30 Marines to face 10 times their number in Dominion troops. The enemy had plasma cannons, armored vehicles, and air support. The humans had portable weapons and determination. The Alterian civilians huddled in the underground shelters could hear the battle raging above them. Explosions shook the earth. Weapons fire echoed through the tunnels, and sometimes they heard human voices shouting orders over the noise. Dr. Reed was among the civilians, an Alterian physician who had been treating wounded refugees when the attack began. He watched human medics working alongside his staff, using their own medical supplies to save Alterian lives. "I do not understand," he said to Corporal Johnson, a human medic who was applying bandages to injured Alterian children. "Your people are dying to protect us, but we are strangers. Why would you sacrifice so much for beings you have never met?" Johnson continued his work without looking up. "Because it is the right thing to do. The simple answer carried more weight than any complex philosophy. These humans had traveled across unknown space and risked their lives because protecting the innocent was simply what they did. Above ground, Captain Lewis's impossible defense was somehow holding. His Marines had turned the approaches to the shelter into a killing field, using the urban terrain to their advantage. When Dominion forces tried to advance, they found themselves facing weapons fire from unexpected angles. Sergeant Brown had positioned himself in a bombed-out building with a clear view of the main street. When a column of Dominion armored vehicles approached, he used a shoulder-fired missile to disable the lead vehicle, blocking the entire formation. The return fire brought down half the building on top of him, but Brown kept shooting from the rubble until enemy troops were forced to find another route. This pattern repeated across the battlefield as individual human soldiers held positions that should have been overrun in minutes. They fought from collapsed buildings, damaged vehicles, and crater-filled streets with a stubborn refusal to give ground. In space, the tide of battle was turning as the Dominion fleet discovered that retreat was not an option. The human ships pursued damaged enemies relentlessly, never allowing them to regroup or make repairs. Fleet Commander Drac had lost over half his vessels and was beginning to panic. His flagship was still under attack by human boarding parties who seemed immune to normal combat psychology. "Sir, the humans have captured the engine room and are moving toward the bridge," his security chief reported. "They have taken casualties that should have stopped any assault force, but they keep advancing." Drac activated his personal communication system to address the human Marines directly. In his experience, most species could be reasoned with even during combat. "Human soldiers, I am Fleet Commander Drac. I am prepared to negotiate terms for the withdrawal of my remaining forces. You have fought well, but continued resistance will only result in more casualties for both sides." The response came from Lieutenant Martinez, who was leading the assault on the bridge. His voice was calm, despite the sound of weapons fire in the background. "Fleet Commander Drac, this is Lieutenant Martinez. We do not negotiate with beings who attack innocent civilians. You will surrender your ship, or we will take it." Drac tried to understand this alien logic. "You are outnumbered 3-1 on this vessel alone. Even if you reach the bridge, you cannot hold it. Why continue this pointless assault?" "Because those people down there are counting on us," Martinez replied. The Dominion commander realized with growing horror that these humans would rather die fighting than accept any outcome that left Alterian civilians in danger. This was warfare as practiced by a species that valued honor above survival. On Alteron Prime, Ambassador Kane received reports from across the planet that defied belief. Human forces were holding positions they should not have been able to defend, protecting civilians at impossible odds, and somehow winning battles through sheer determination. Commander Liu transmitted from his position near the capital city, where his small force had surrounded and captured an entire Dominion battalion. "Ambassador Kane, this is Commander Liu. The enemy commander wants to know our terms for accepting their surrender." Kane had never dealt with military prisoners before. "What should I tell him?" Liu's response carried the weight of human military doctrine. "Tell him that anyone who came to their world to take lives will be treated as they treated their intended victims. But anyone who surrenders and helps protect civilians will be treated with the respect they show to the innocent." This was justice, as practiced by humans, harsh for the guilty but merciful for those who chose to do right. As the battle continued, something unprecedented was happening. The Dominion forces, who had never faced serious resistance in their campaigns of conquest, were beginning to break. Some units attempted to retreat only to find their escape routes blocked by human forces who had somehow anticipated their movements. Others tried to negotiate local ceasefires only to discover that humans did not stop fighting until the threat was completely eliminated. But most shocking of all, some Dominion troops were actually surrendering and asking to help protect the Alterian civilians they had been ordered to slaughter. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans fought to protect the innocent, they did not just defeat their enemies, they changed them. 3 days after the battle ended, Dr. Williams worked in what had once been a Dominion field hospital and was now a joint medical facility treating wounded from all sides. The human surgeon had not slept in over 40 hours, but there were still patients who needed care. The Alterian physician working beside him, Dr. Vale, watched with amazement as Williams treated a wounded Dominion soldier with the same careful attention he gave to human and Alterian patients. "I do not understand your species," Dr. Vale said quietly. 3 days ago, this soldier was trying to kill your people and destroy our world. Now you work to save his life. Williams continued suturing the plasma wound on the Dominion soldier's arm. "The fighting is over. Now our job is to heal." This simple statement captured something fundamental about humanity that no other species in the galaxy had ever displayed: the ability to switch instantly from warrior to protector, from destroyer to healer, based solely on what the situation required. Ambassador Kane walked through the streets of his capital city, surveying the damage and the reconstruction efforts already underway. Human engineers worked alongside Alterian civilians to repair power systems and water treatment plants. They shared their equipment and expertise freely, asking nothing in return. A human officer approached him, Colonel Adams, who commanded the planetary security forces now that the Dominion threat was eliminated. "Ambassador, we have received surrender. Offers from 12 Dominion fleet commanders in nearby systems," Adams reported. "They want to negotiate terms before we arrive to liberate other worlds they have conquered." Kane blinked in surprise. "You plan to attack other Dominion holdings?" "No, sir. We plan to liberate other victims. The Dominion Empire has conquered 47 worlds in this sector. We cannot leave those populations under their control." The scope of human ambition was breathtaking. They had traveled across unknown space to save one world, and now they planned to free dozens more. Most species would have been satisfied with a single victory and returned home. But humans, Kane was learning, did not think like most species. Captain Reed found Admiral Ross supervising the distribution of medical supplies to Alterian refugee camps. The human fleet commander had removed his armor and was working in simple clothes, helping to carry supplies like any common laborer. "Admiral, I have completed the analysis you requested," Reed said, handing him a data pad. "Our intelligence teams have finished interrogating captured Dominion officers and reviewing their ship databases." Ross read the report with growing interest. 47 conquered worlds, as we suspected. Population totaling over 60 billion beings across multiple species. Most have been enslaved or relocated to serve Dominion industrial needs. Reed nodded, grimly. "The pattern is consistent. They attack peaceful worlds that cannot defend themselves, eliminate or enslave the population, and strip the planets of resources. They have been operating this way for over 2 centuries. Ross looked up from the data pad to study the Alterian civilians receiving aid nearby. Children who had been terrified days earlier were now playing games with human soldiers. Adults who had faced extinction were rebuilding their lives with human help. "Colonel, prepare liberation plans for all 47 worlds. We will start with the most recently conquered and work our way back through their empire." Reed stared at his commander. "Sir, that will require a massive commitment of forces and resources. The political leadership back home may not approve such an extended campaign." Ross smiled for the first time since Reed had known him. "Colonel, when the folks back home learn what we found out here, they will not just approve this campaign, they will demand it." In the Alterian council chambers, Ambassador Kane was learning more about their mysterious rescuers. A human diplomat, named Davis, had arrived to begin formal contact between their species. "Your world is listed in our star charts as uninhabitable," Kane said, reviewing the data Davis had provided. The radiation levels, atmospheric toxicity, and geological instability should make it impossible for intelligent life to evolve. Davis nodded calmly. Terra is what we call a death world. Most of galactic civilization evolved on planets with stable climates and limited dangers. Our world has been trying to kill us since we first developed consciousness. This explained so much about human behavior. They did not fear death because they lived with it every day. They did not retreat from impossible odds because they had survived worse on their own world. But that does not explain why you help strangers, Kane said. Surely beings who evolved on such a harsh world would be focused on their own survival. Davis considered the question carefully. Perhaps it is because we know what extinction feels like. Every human alive today is descended from ancestors who barely survived ice ages, volcanic winters, plague outbreaks, and asteroid impacts. We know how it feels to face extinction with no help coming. He gestured toward the window, where human and Alterian workers were rebuilding damaged structures together. We also learned that survival requires cooperation. Humans survived our death world not by becoming individual predators, but by working together to protect the group. When we see other species facing extinction, we cannot just stand by and watch. As the days passed, more human ships arrived in the Alteron system. These were not warships, but hospital ships, transport vessels, and engineering craft loaded with supplies and equipment for reconstruction. The galaxy watched in amazement as reports spread of the human intervention. Dozens of species that had refused to help during the crisis now offered assistance, claiming they had always been concerned about the Dominion threat. General Park received a transmission from the Centauri Coalition offering to send military support for future operations against the Dominion. His response was polite but pointed. "We appreciate your offer of assistance." However, we noticed that this support was not available when the Alterians were facing extinction 3 days ago. We will handle the Dominion situation ourselves. This became the standard human response to offers of help from species who had stood aside during the crisis. They were not bitter or angry, but they made it clear that they would rely on themselves and their allies rather than fair-weather friends. The Alterian government announced its decision to join a mutual defense pact with humanity, the first such alliance in their peaceful history. Other species who had been victimized by the Dominion began reaching out, seeking protection and alliance with these terrifying but benevolent humans. Ambassador Kane met with Admiral Ross one final time before the human fleet departed to begin their liberation campaign. "Admiral, I must ask you something that has troubled me since you arrived. You knew nothing about our species when you received our distress call. You risked your entire fleet to save strangers. How did you know we were worth saving?" Ross looked out at the city where humans and Alterians worked side by side in the reconstruction effort. "Ambassador, we did not know anything about your people when we received your call for help. But we knew everything we needed to know about your attackers. Anyone who preys on the defenseless reveals their true nature. Anyone who asks for help to protect the innocent reveals theirs." As the human fleet prepared to depart for their next liberation mission, the galaxy began to understand a new truth. There were predators among the stars who took what they wanted from those too weak to resist. But now there were also guardians among the stars who traveled unknown distances to protect those who could not protect themselves. The age of easy conquest was over. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they had made it clear that no one would face extinction alone.